It's kind of funny looking back. I read that in 1928, people were so hyped about television, right?
Yeah.
That one prediction said it'd be in most homes within, like, a year.
Wow. Talk about getting ahead of yourself. A bit optimistic, maybe?
Just a tad. And, well, it got me thinking about other big, ambitious leaps in TV history, especially one where, the audience could actually talk back.
Ah, you must mean QUBE, right? Warner Communications, a big experiment back in the late 70s.
That's the one. Launched December 1st, 1977, in Columbus, Ohio. QUBE just showed up, promising this total shakeup for TV.
Right, because back then, most people had, maybe 5 or 6 channels, if they were lucky.
Exactly. Just a handful of broadcast channels, probably fuzzy reception with an antenna. Cable was starting, sure, but mostly for clearer pictures, maybe a few extra things.
And QUBE comes along saying, hey, you can actually interact with this.
Yeah, that was the core idea. A two-way system.
Yeah.
You had this special remote control.
Tethered to the box, wasn't it?
Yeah, tethered to a set-top box, letting you respond to stuff on screen. It was huge ambition. They wanted to totally revolutionize TV. Pay-per-view, niche channels, real-time interaction.
It really was aiming for a different kind of experience, not just more channels.
Totally. And you have to remember the context. Cable was mostly a one-way street then.
Pretty basic stuff compared to QUBE's pitch.
Absolutely. So Warner Communications, led by Steve Ross, he'd seen this interactive system in Tokyo, a closed-circuit thing.
Okay.
And he got this vision. Beam Warner Bros. Movies directly into homes. Plus, he was big on this idea of narrowcasting.
Narrowcasting, like channels for specific interests.
Exactly. Super specific audiences, which, sounds pretty familiar now, but was way ahead of its time then.
So Ross had the big picture. But who actually made it happen? Boots on the ground in Ohio.
That'd be Gus Hauser, head of Warner Cable.
Yes.
He was the guy tasked with turning Ross's dream into, actual television. And what's really interesting is who Hauser brought in. Not just cable guys. People from music, from network TV programming, even Broadway.
Really? Like who?
Well, there was Jock Holtzman from Elektra Records, Moke Dan, who'd been a big programming exec at CBS, Spencer Harrison involved with My Fair Lady, and even the agent Ted Ashley.
Wow, that's quite a mix. An entertainment supergroup, almost.
Kind of. Plus, Niall Hinson focused just on the Columbus Interactive Channel plan, and Pioneer Electronics actually built the hardware, the box itself.
So they were consciously trying to build something different, bringing in all these outside perspectives.
Definitely seems that way. They weren't just adding tech. They wanted a different kind of entertainment.
Makes sense. So what was the official line? What was QUBE supposed to do for the people actually using it?
The stated goal was, and I quote, to create a faster method for groups to communicate and interact across distance.
That sounds, pretty prescient for the late 70s, doesn't it?
It really does. So they launched in Columbus with 30 channels. 10 were pay-per-view movie channels. Totally knew that. 10 were broadcast channels, local stations, plus some from nearby cities like Cincinnati, Indianapolis.
Okay.
And 10 were these community channels. That's where the interaction really came in.
Gotcha. And I heard the first box went to a specific family.
Yeah, the Kessler family in Hilliard, Ohio. Right. Apparently, their early viewing habits actually helped shape some programming decisions. A focus group of one family.
So Columbus was the lab, basically.
Exactly. But Warner had bigger plans. QUBE wasn't just for Columbus.
Right, you mentioned expansion.
Yeah, it was a major strategic tool. They used the promise of QUBE, this futuristic interactive TV, to help them win those really valuable cable franchise battles in cities like Houston, Milwaukee, Dallas, Cincinnati.
So dangle the shiny new tech to get the monopoly. Clever.
Very. It was a big part of their growth strategy.
Okay, let's talk about that tech. How did this two-way thing actually work back then, before home computers were common?
Well, it was pretty unique. You had that remote, right? About the size of a book, connected by that cable.
The tether.
The tether, yeah. You had 18 buttons, 10 numbers for channels, standard stuff, but then 5 bigger buttons with little LED lights.
Those were the interactive ones.
Yep, those were for answering polls, voting, whatever the show asked. Up to 5 choices, then 3 more buttons at the bottom to switch between pay-per-view, broadcast, and community channels.
And it launched with 30 channels, but could handle more?
Designed for 60 eventually. And pay-per-view was interesting. You needed a physical key.
A key? Like a metal key?
Sort of. It was like a little plastic holder with a magnet inside. You had to stick it into a slot on the remote to unlock the premium stuff.
More involved than just clicking buy. What was happening behind the curtains to make all this interaction and billing work?
That's where it got really heavy duty. huge banks of mainframe computers back at headquarters, a whole new production studio built just for QUBE shows,
Mainframes. Okay.
and 4 big central computers were constantly scanning the network. They called it sweeping every 6 seconds.
6 seconds. That's fast.
Yeah. Checking who was watching what, they literally called it an instant Nielsen rating. It also logged all your pay-per-view buys automatically for billing.
And process the poll results.
In real time. Collected all the votes from everyone pressing their buttons and could display the result almost instantly back on screen.
That is seriously impressive for the 70s. Pre-internet data collection on a massive scale.
Exactly. It really foreshadowed today's data-driven media world, Targeted ads, recommendations. QUBE was doing a very early, maybe expensive version of that.
But it couldn't have been easy. What were the big technical headaches?
Oh, plenty. First off, cost. Just astronomical. They called it the Rolls-Royce system internally. The box in your home was way pricier than a normal cable box.
Computers and studio?
Millions. Plus, they hit security snags early on with the premium channels. Had to physically go out and modify some boxes in people's homes.
Ouch.
And a really big one was getting that signal back from the homes reliably. The return path.
Right. Sending signals out is one thing. Getting them back clean is harder.
Much harder. They needed special equipment called bridger gate controllers all over the network just to manage that two-way traffic cleanly.
Like early network infrastructure challenges.
Precisely. And that interactive games channel they kept promising, QUBE games, never actually launched. Suggests they hit a wall there, technologically or financially.
So massive upfront costs plus ongoing technical challenges and staffing.
Absolutely. Big team of engineers, IT guys on call 24/7. And don't forget the cost of actually making all that original interactive TV they were aiming for, like 6+ hours of live stuff a day initially.
Whoa. That's intense.
Yeah, incredibly resource intensive.
So that sweeping for ratings, the data collection, that raised eyebrows even back then, didn't it? Privacy concerns?
It did. Even in the late 70s, people started realizing, wait, this system knows exactly what I watch, what movies I buy, even my opinions on poll questions. That started to cause some unease.
And the whole bridger gate controller thing, managing the two-way path, that sounds like groundwork for later internet challenges.
It really was. They were tackling fundamental problems in bi-directional networking that companies wrestled with years later building the internet. Kind of ironic that some of that original QUBE infrastructure is now used for broadband.
Okay, so they had this powerful, if costly, tech. What did they actually put on the screen? What were those channels?
They broke it down into 3 tiers. T channels for television, your standard broadcast networks, local affiliates, plus those imported ones from other cities. Gave you more choice.
Right, the basics plus extra.
Then the C channels community. This was the heart of the interactive stuff. Locally produced shows made for Columbus viewers to participate in.
Okay.
And finally, the P channels, premium or pay-per-view. First-run movies, classics, sports, concerts, specials, even adult films. A pretty broad offering.
Their big mission was getting people involved, right?
Yeah, they explicitly wanted to showcase the opportunity of having an audience participate in the programming that they saw on TV.
So what were some of those signature interactive shows?
Oh, they had some really wild ones. Columbus Alive, a daily live news and talk show. You could vote on local issues right then and there.
Yeah.
It had local chat, interviews, launched with about 3 hours of live TV a day.
3 hours live daily. That's ambitious.
Totally. Then there was Talent Search. Imagine a local talent show where the home audience is the judge, voting in real time.
Like American Idol decades early.
Kind of. But if your score dropped too low mid-performance, they literally stopped you. Robert Morton, who later produced Letterman, worked on it.
Ooh, brutal. What else?
For kids, Flippo's Magic Circus, hosted by a local clown, Flippo, had games for kids in the studio and at home.
Interactive Kids TV.
Yep, a game show called How Do You Like Your Eggs, where couples tried to guess how the home audience voted. Bill Cullen hosted that one.
Bill Cullen.
And Soap Scoop, daily recaps of network soaps, but with viewer polls about characters and plot. They even had actors and producers on.
Engaging the soap fan.
They even tried a TV tag sale, going once, going twice, where you could tentatively bid from home.
Huh. Okay, that's different.
And beyond shows, you could use it to poll opinions for city officials, take quizzes for college courses, compete against game show contestants, order merchandise. Even subscribe to emergency alarms.
So way beyond just entertainment. But the games channel never happened.
QUBE Games, planned for P8. Yeah, never got off the ground, unfortunately.
Still, quite a mix. A real laboratory for programming ideas. What about the channels that became famous later?
No, that's maybe QUBE's biggest legacy.
Yeah.
On Channel C3, they had Pinwheel.
Pinwheel. That sounds familiar.
It should. 12 hours a day, commercial-free, for preschoolers. That show, that channel concept, directly evolved into Nickelodeon. Jim Jenkins, creator of Doug, actually worked on Pinwheel, playing a character called Minus.
No way. So Nickelodeon started right there.
Essentially, yeah. The model was born on QUBE, and then there was sight on sound,
Music videos.
early music videos, concert clips, and interactive viewers voted on the music.
Yeah.
That was seen as the direct forerunner to MTV.
And wasn't the guy who launched MTV involved?
Bob Pittman. He was a program director at QUBE before he went on to launch MTV. The ideas were tested there first.
Incredible. So MTV and Nickelodeon, two cable giants, basically came out of this Columbus experiment.
Largely, yes. The concepts were developed and proven locally before going national. Columbus really was an incubator.
It really shows how local experiments can fuel huge industry shifts.
Absolutely. And it highlights that duality, again, empowering viewers to vote on music or kids' shows while simultaneously tracking every button press.
That tension between participation and data collection.
Right from the start.
Why Columbus, though? Why pick Ohio for this sci-fi TV system?
Well, Columbus had this reputation even then as a great test market. Its demographics were seen as pretty representative of the U.S. average.
So if it worked in Columbus...
It might work elsewhere. Plus, it wasn't too far from Warner HQ in New York for the execs to keep an eye on things. They started setting up shop, hiring, building in spring '77.
And we mentioned the expansion. It didn't stay just in Columbus.
No. Early '80s, they rolled it out, or tried to, in Houston, Milwaukee, Dallas, Cincinnati, St. Louis, Pittsburgh, using it as that carrot to win the franchise bids.
But that spread them thin?
Yeah, definitely strained the programming budget, trying to support interactive content across multiple cities.
How many people actually signed up? Did everyone want interactive TV?
In Columbus, they started around 10,000 subs, eventually got to about half the homes in the city, which is pretty significant penetration.
Okay.
The system there could pull up to 50,000 homes in 6 seconds, and reports said participation among subscribers was high. Like, one example had 10,500 out of 30,000 paying for a specific movie.
And people who had it used it.
Seems so. Across all QUBE markets, Warner Cable had about 200,000 subs total. But the overall take-up rate for the interactive service, the premium QUBE tier, wasn't high enough to cover those massive costs.
Some high engagement among the users, but not enough total users paying the extra fee.
Exactly that disconnect.
Yeah.
People liked it if they had it, but maybe not enough people were willing to pay that premium, about $10 extra a month, which was a decent chunk of change for TV back then.
So the price was a barrier, limited the market.
Probably a big factor. They had an enthusiastic core, but not a broad enough base to make the expensive tech and programming pay off.
Let's talk dollars and cents. How much did this whole thing cost Warner?
Big numbers.
Yeah.
Initial investment estimates were, $13 to $25 million. And that was 1970s money.
Just to start.
Right. Each home unit, that QUBE controller, cost Warner around $200. Compare that to a basic cable box then.
Much more expensive.
Way more. They hired 250 staff just for Columbus.
Yeah.
Built the studio, bought the mainframes. Huge capital costs. And ongoing costs, the tech team, 247 support, producing all that live TV.
6 hours a day.
Yeah, it all added up. And the expansion just stretched those finances even thinner, forcing cuts to local programming budgets later on.
So, bottom line, was it profitable? Did Warner make money on QUBE?
Not even close. It was a huge financial drain. By 1982, Warner Cable reported a $99 million loss.
Wow.
By '83, their total debt was around $875 million. And QUBE, the interactive programming, the system bills, the equipment, was a major factor in that debt. It was never profitable in its, 6-7 years of operation.
So why did it fail financially, just the cost? Or were there other things going on?
Cost was huge, obviously. But yeah, other factors too. Scott Kernett, who worked there, pointed to instability at the parent company, Warner Communications. Remember Atari?
The video game crash.
Right. Apparently, Atari's wild profit swings made Warner Corporate really nervous about any venture that wasn't making money right now. QUBE, with its long-term vision, got squeezed.
Corporate pressure.
Plus, the whole TV landscape was changing fast.
Yeah.
CNN, TNT, ESPN, these big national cable channels were launching and getting popular.
More competition for eyeballs.
And they were mostly cheap, one-way programming. They kind of drowned out QUBE's more expensive local interactive stuff. The industry consolidated around that multi-channel linear model, leaving QUBE looking like an expensive outlier.
And the privacy thing didn't help either, I imagine.
Definitely not. Those worries about tracking viewing habits, opinions, purchases, it became a real concern. Fear of data misuse, hacking.
Even back then.
Yeah. Everett Rogers, a communications scholar, called QUBE the first big media operation to raise major user privacy issues. That likely led to some people just not renewing.
So, pulling all that together, when did they finally pull the plug?
The official end came in 1984, 7 years after launch. They shut down the interactive features, stopped the local shows, started swapping out the QUBE boxes for regular ones.
And didn't they have to sell off MTV and Nickelodeon around then?
Yeah, Warner Amex sold them to Viacom, partly to raise cash and keep the core cable operation afloat after the QUBE losses. Kind of ironic, selling off QUBE's most successful children.
So a classic case of being ahead of its time. Great idea, groundbreaking tech, but the market, the costs, the timing just wasn't right.
That sums it up pretty well. The cost of that pioneering interactive tech was just too high back then. Plus, educating the market, dealing with privacy fears, it was too much, too soon.
But the lessons learned weren't wasted.
Not at all. MTV, Nickelodeon, they benefited immensely from QUBE's trial and error and from technology getting cheaper later on. QUBE paid the pioneer tax, you could say.
Yeah.
Took the risks, paved the way.
So financially a failure for Warner, but technologically and conceptually a major milestone.
Absolutely. A
Yeah.
real paradox. Hugely influential despite its short life and financial woes. It really changed the conversation about what television could be.
It really provides critical lessons even today about launching innovative tech, understanding market readiness, and balancing features with costs.
Definitely. Its legacy is huge, even if QUBE itself didn't last.
Yeah.
It fundamentally impacted how we think about TV and interactive media.
It really makes you ponder, doesn't it? How many innovations bubble up, seem to fail, but actually plant the seeds for massive changes down the road, things we just take for granted now.
Exactly. QUBE is maybe one of the best examples of that in media history. That dream of talking back your TV, it didn't die in 1984. It just shape-shifted into the interactive, on-demand world we live in now.